Former Walmart employees, what is the most horrible situation that happened to you at work? I worked for Walmart 11 years ago for a whopping total of 8 months. I worked the overnight shift as an overnight stocker for Department 8, Pets. The store I worked at had just gotten brand new high-rise shelves installed. They were said to be able to hold over a ton. Well, one night after getting all my regular freight stocked and the overstock put into the bins, my bosses had me pull 8 pallets of Arm & Hammer cat litter. The boxes had a bonus 10 pounds inside, making them nearly 35 or so pounds apiece. They wanted all of those on the high-risers. I asked if they were absolutely sure the shelves would be able to handle all that weight. I threw a crap fit about it because I know I was in the right for being worried. Other department managers who were there also sided with me. They watched over the next couple of hours as I carefully did my job. As I was putting the final 12 boxes on the bottom shelf, I heard a cracking and tearing sound. And next thing I know is, I'm buried underneath all of the cat litter that had caused the shelf to collapse. Everybody in the store heard it happen, and everybody was explicitly told not to dial 911 or anything. Damn that crap. After getting all my blood cleaned from my face and cuts patched up, I called my uncle's then-time girlfriend, who was a lawyer, told her what had just occurred, and what the upper management is attempting to do. As of today, I still haven't spent all the money I received as a result of going to court over it. Damn Walmart. Story 2. Working there as a cashier since October. Christmas Eve rolls around, and thank God I'm not scheduled to work. Cue phone call from the manager asking why I haven't come in yet that day. I'm not on the schedule? Manager. Yes, you are me. I'm not coming in. I wasn't on the schedule. Next day I worked was the day after boxing. Went and looked at the schedule, and lo and behold, someone wrote that I was supposed to work in pencil. I quit shortly after. Story 3. Last summer, I frequently visited my best friend who worked at the technology counter thing at Walmart. One day when I was there, someone took the biggest, steamiest crap I've ever seen in my life in the middle of the toy aisle. Someone pushed a cart through it and it smeared everywhere. My buddy called in a code brown on his walkie-talkie, trying to be a smart ass. Code brown means hostage situation. Hilarity ensued. Brown is a shooting situation. Story 4. I'll start with my grossest. A woman comes in with some panties and said they didn't fit, and she wanted to return them for cash because she had already bought the correct size elsewhere. She had a receipt and plopped a Walmart bag down on the counter. Inside this bag were 6 crusty-crotched, crap-stained panties that were a biohazard from 6 feet away. Needless to say, I did not touch them. I paged the manager on duty, and he tells me to just take them back despite being very nasty. Processed the return, and she happily left the store with her $8. Story 5. I don't know if I had one particular horror story. Every day was its own horror story. My biggest pet peeve was people coming through the express lane with 800,000 items in their damn cart. Overweight, middle-aged women were the primary culprit. I don't know why. Some weird sense of entitlement, I guess. There was one lady who could tell I was annoyed. I didn't say anything, but she kept trying to have a conversation with me, and I kept giving her short, one-word answers. At one point, she was like, "Do you have a problem with me or something?" And I was like, "Well, it does say 20 items or less. We have very little counter space here." She said, "You're the most hateful person I've ever met." Which must be an exaggeration because I never said anything really rude to her, other than to answer the question she clearly asked. I'm surprised she didn't call a manager. Some dude pounded his fist on the counter as hard as he could and screamed, "Come on, man, hurry the duck up!" I was trying to unroll a roll of dimes to give him his change. He was buying corn dogs from the deli place. Had a guy throw his cigarettes at me because they were the wrong ones. I laid the box on the counter. He picked them up and threw them at me, hitting me in the chest and said, "I said gold, git." Those were just isolated holes, though. Really, it was just the monotony and soul-sucking feeling of dealing with slack-jawed idiots all damn day long. Story 6. Not really a horror story, more sad than anything. There was this older lady, late 50, early 60, I'm guessing, that came in every day, and she would kind of attach herself to an employee, usually the same one, and follow them around just talking to them about their day, her day, all kinds of stuff. As soon as I started at Walmart, she attached herself to me. I actually got to know her pretty well. She didn't drive and walked about 20 miles to get to Walmart each day, just because she had nothing else to do and was lonely, her words. She had 7, I think, cats and 3 pugs. She lived in a house with no floors and no electricity. A coworker who lived near her verified this. I'm pretty sure she didn't have running water either, just because of obvious hygiene issues. She also very obviously had some kind of mental issue. What was even more sad is that a lot of my coworkers would make fun of her to her face, but she didn't understand what they were doing. I thought it was really ducked up. I felt bad for her, so whenever I had time, I would stop and talk to her. It got to the point where she would call the store looking for me on the days she didn't come in. Story 7. I worked in grocery as a stocker. We had just finished a cereal display near the front of the store compiled of about 100 boxes. In comes an older lady, around 60, driving one of the electric carts. She's looking dead on at the display and promptly rams into the thing. Boxes go everywhere and she starts apologizing over and over and explains that she's legally blind. A customer that was nearby and saw everything asked her how she drove here if she was blind. She responded by quickly turning around and leaving the store. Story 8. Well, I was a cashier for 2 years. Honestly, I pretty much enjoyed it. Shocking, I know. But the worst experience I had at Walmart was the night I refer to as the comedy of errors. Long text, and forgive me, I'm on mobile. It happened about a year or so in. Firstly, I was the only one open. Now, a lot of people say that, but usually that's not true. Why? The company uses data from the last year to assign shifts for the current year. For example, if a snowstorm came in on January 2nd, 2014, and we were bombarded, the computer would assign a bunch of cashiers to work on January 2nd, 2015. This system leads to days when there are very few cashiers, and days where there are many. On this day was a slow day the year before, so there were fewer than usual. Also, everyone else called out. So I was alone and kept the entire store on my shoulders. So I enacted time-saving measures. Firstly, I would, between orders, give people in line their own dividers so they could start putting their groceries on the belt while I was helping the person in line before them. Constant flow. Well, this woman, hereafter referred to as Ellen, comes in my line with her son. But he was transgender. I'm actually quite open on that type of thing, so I used male pronouns for him, and will do so here. As I gave the customer in front of Ellen her divider, I overtossed it. Ellen claims I assaulted the customer in front of her. I asked the woman I threw it to, and she denied Ellen's claim. To quote Tommy Wiseau, I did not hit her. I did not. I apologized, regardless, and the woman's husband made a joke about hitting me. Because I was stressed, and everyone was annoyed about my line, I went with the joke, adding it better be a good punch. They enjoyed it and went on their way. Throughout this entire time, I'm paging for my manager to help me with the line. It reached Derry by this point, the back of the store. It's Ellen's turn now. Everything goes all right until I ask about a shirt without a tag. Now, by the book, this ain't so hard. Just ask the customer the price in the department and fill out a little slip. But you needed another slip to show the accountants where the shirt was manually added as a source document. Now, I asked Ellen what department the shirt was from. She refused to answer. I took the shirt off the hanger and unbuttoned the top. Men's shirts have buttons on the right and female shirts' buttons are on the left, due to an interesting historical aside I won't get into here. I determined the shirt was in the female department, explained what I did for the Get Ellen, and moved on with her order. Her son was buying liquor. He looked under 40. Walmart policy is to card every friggin' person in the damn party. So I carded the guy and Ellen, who was pissed. Ellen was more pissed when her check wasn't going through. FYI, check paying at Walmart can be a get when the scanner isn't working. Well, it wasn't. And sometimes the bank issuer asks for verification of the person's identity, which adds 5 minutes to the transaction. Ellen is pissed and she and her son leave. I see them complain to my store manager. Well, the next part is a bit confusing. The store manager pulls me aside and accuses me of committing harassment and assaulting the customer. The manager was a git and abused me just to show off his power. He sends me back with the lovely threat that, if you receive another complaint tonight, you are fired, and I will make you unhurtable to the point cleaning crap on the sidewalk is a dream job. Get back to work. Of course, the line is still out to Derry, and I'm traumatized with fear. I work another hour or so I get home. I poured myself a drink and wondered how. How did I commit harassment to Ellen? I understood the assault. She just denied the woman from before and claimed it hit her instead. Then it hit me. Well, remember the shirt? Because I had to put it in a department to sell it, I offended Ellen on behalf of her son. Apparently, the shirt was for him and not Ellen as I surmised. By having the button on the left, I misgendered the person even though the shirt was undeniably from the woman's department. I immediately fobbed my friends. They agreed that my actions were okay and not harassment. Damn, Ellen's son told me how professional I was, which I thank my college for. I only offended the mother and not the transgendered individual. There's more to that night, but that's enough for now. Anyways, the next day I had off, but I went in to get my side of the story out and to complain about that manager. That was unprofessional as crap. Anyways, it was a comedy of errors, to quote my favorite manager there, because she knows I wouldn't hurt a teddy bear. Story 9. I could write a novel about all the garbage I saw in my 5 years there while in college. Main rage-inducing moments. 1. People coming through the 20 or less item lane with 2 damn buggies full of garbage, and they look at me and ask, all the other lines are long, so this is okay, right? Me. Silence 2. When you're a cashier and you are clearly closed with the light off, a closed sign on the conveyor, my dead inside 1,000-yard stare, etc., people will ignore all of it and start stacking stuff on my line, then get outrageously angry when I direct them somewhere else. I have an exam in 8 hours, and I've already stayed 30 minutes past time I was supposed to leave. Got foe. 3. My main job was selling guns and ammo. People had no grasp at all that willfully lying on the 4473 is actually breaking the law. I got really good at spotting BS a mile away. 3A had one guy walk up, clearly mentally off, and try to buy a gun. After talking to him and probing a bit, I was already going to deny the sale after I realized this man was a few fries short of a Happy Meal. After he gets denied, he says to me, "I was institutionalized for a few years back, but I'm better now." Why was I denied? 3B had a woman walk up with a presumed grandson. Normal start, instead of looking, he goes directly to a shotgun and points to it and says, "We want this one. Ask who the legal guardian is, inform them of the sale and legality, blah, blah, blah." No big deal. Had an odd feeling, but I brushed it off. This is where it gets interesting. As she starts to fill out the form, the kid gets on his phone and makes a call and starts gesticulating towards the shotgun and starts mumbling. I walk closer and heard, "Brand is the one, right? Are you sure?" Instant red flag. I start paying real close attention, and it starts to look like a straw purchase. I start asking all the usual questions. Intended use? Who's it for? Hunting or self-defense, etc. Answer are short and rehearsed. Another red flag pops up. The final nail in the coffin was a guy comes up, walks to the grandparent, asks how it is going. Then the kid points to the gun and asks, "Is this the one you wanted?" Ding ding, we have a winner straw purchase. At this point, I shut it down and tell the grandparent, "Ma'am, I believe you aren't buying this weapon for yourself or your grandkid, so I cannot continue with the sale. Is there anything I can help you with?" She promptly loses her mind. She's screaming at me, "Stupid kid," and generally berating me for all her life's woes. She screams for a manager, and I get one and let him know what's going on. Of course, by the time management gets here, she puts on the exasperated grandmother face and asks him, "Why won't this idiot won't sell me a gun? It's my Second Amendment right." Manager, "Where'd the guy you were with go?" Dude walks up at this point behind what looks to be his son. "Ma'am, is the gun for you or him?" Grandmother, "Oh yes, it's for hunt deer with this." Holds up birdshot. Me, "You're going hunt deer with birdshot." Manager, "Ma'am, I'm backing up whatever my gun guy says. He know more about this than I do. We can't sell you the gun. Have a good day." Leaves. Grandmother, "Damn you and damn this store. I'm never coming back." Thank you. 4. Someone argued with me insisting point 2. 3 rem was the exact same as 5.56. Get I do this for a living, and I've hunted for 20 years. I know what I'm talking about. Too bad I couldn't pimp slap customers when they needed it. Story 10. I started as a stockman, cart pusher, and eventually ended up as the D16, lawn and garden manager, absolutely forever ago. I honestly cannot begin to tell you how many used diapers I had to clean up in the parking lot. If I had to guess, I'd say I probably could have filled a dumpster. A very small percentage were wrapped up or in a bag, but most were just tossed on the pavement wide open with baby crap there for the world to see. For the record, there were trash cans at every cart rack. Damn nasty. Since I was the only non-retarded stockman cart pusher, that also made me the backup janitor. I was coming into work one day and saw an elderly lady dribbling a trail of crap up the main aisle. I watched her leave and then started walking the trail all the way back to the ladies' room. Crap. All over the entire bathroom. Why? I went to find the actual janitor and told him what was up, and he laughed and clocked out. Damn you, Jay! So I closed the bathroom and power washed the entire damn thing and used about 10 gallons of bleach. I wasn't smart enough to quit, so I kept at it and eventually made it to manager. That's when I discovered exactly how stupid people... I kid you not, get into arguments with customers about how a patio set would most definitely fit in the back of a Civic or Neon almost daily. No, it won't. Not unless I run over every piece of it with the forklift and dump the scrap in your car. Speaking of forklifts, my assistant manager was driving it once day in the side lot and somehow managed to run the forks into the side of a parked car. How? Because he was a damn idiot, that's how. This was apparently my fault because I hadn't moved the pallets of mulch yet, even though I already had. And if I had, he wouldn't have hit the car. Sure. We almost fought when he tried to throw me under the bus in front of the GM and police. I later stenciled a car with the red circle and line on the side of the forklift. One super crappy, sleety day in late February, I spent nearly 18 hours unloading trees and shrubs with the car-spearing forklift. I went inside to take a warming break near the tail end of my ordeal and had 3 managers swarming me before I'd even finished my first cigarette, demanding to know why I wasn't out there at the truck. I absolutely lost my crap and told them they'd all better get the duck away from me. Supposedly, they heard me going off all the way in claims at the other end of the back of the store. The people they hired to staff my department were a joke, too. Pregnant girls and old people mostly. That wouldn't be bad if one of the requirements to be back there wasn't to load countless bags of mulch and potting soil and fertilizer, so they were pretty much useless. After doing all their work and my own for almost 2 months, I, with the help of my fantastic and sympathetic HR lady, pulled an end around and direct hired 3 high school boys from my neighborhood. Worked out great for me, and they got paid almost $9 back in '98. Not bad since McDonald's was going for barely $7 back then. I'd been there for just over 4 years when I'd finally had enough. One payday, I was mistakenly given the check from the lady back in crafts. I wasn't paying attention, so I opened it up and saw the check, and then her name. Now, for the record, this woman was probably the most worthless person I've ever met. Every morning, she'd complain and get until someone helped her with her freight. And by help, I mean put just about every bit of it up while she sat at her little counter and drank coffee. Once her freight was dealt with, she'd pretty much be on break for the rest of the day, and we'd have to page the crap out of her for anything. Anyway, this git was getting paid almost $3 more than I was, and I did more work in 5 minutes than she did all day. I gave the cash office her check and got mine and went to drop my 2 weeks' notice before I started my day. The next day, the GM called me back into his office and said he wasn't going to accept my notice. What? Apparently, I was supposed to forget what I saw and just go along with it. Yeah, right. I worked out my 2 weeks like I said I was going to, and the first Monday after it was up, I went to the pool. Well, my cell, the good old indestructible Nokia, starts blowing up, and I ignored it until around noon or so. Finally, I got tired of them calling and answered. Where are you? At the pool. You were supposed to be here today. Nope, I quit. Oh, story 11. My mom was a manager at Walmart. She told me about this woman who was trying to steal a prepaid phone when she got caught by security. She used the knife she was attempting to open the plastic packaging with to cut the security dude after cutting herself. She then went on to scream at him that she has AIDS and now he's going to have it for trying to stop her. Story 12. I had 3 major incidents before I was forcibly removed. The first one was where some idiot wanted to buy some shoes. However, store policy requires that all associates open the box and check to make sure the shoes match what is on the box. I go to open the box, and the customer tells me not to. I tell him it's store policy and try again, and he insists I don't look in the box. The next logically thing was to ask for a manager because this guy was now just being difficult. While trying to get a manager, he stomps off to another register to get his shoes bought. For some reason, he comes back when manager is present, and she helps him. It turns out he was already wearing the shoes he was wanting to buy, and he put old, nasty, worn-out shoes in the box in their place. During this whole incident, this guy throws a tantrum because he's not being served right away. He then tells my manager that I don't know what I'm doing, and that I was retarded, and that I need to get fired. I grew up with autism going through school, and being called retarded by anyone was severely offensive to me. When the retard word came, I went from irritated and enraged. It took all of my willpower not to jump over the counter, grab this guy, and beat. The second one was when a lady whom I could tell who was having a bad day was asking me about phone case. She proceeded to lift up a phone case and asked me, "Does this go to an active S4? I replied all phones it would fit was listed on the packaging. At that point, she condescendingly asks me, "Do you even know what an active S4 is?" I didn't. And the reason being why is because my coworkers and I didn't not refer to it as an active S4, but a Galaxy S4, which I'm pretty sure is a more understood name for it. Before I could answer, she rudely finishes with somewhat of an attitude. I figured the conversation was over and another customer asked for my assistance. As I turned to him, the condescending lady gripes at me, "I'm not done talking with you, you rude." She then proceed, read my name tag, and tell me she was reporting me to my manager, all to satisfy her need to take her day out on me. The third and final was, of course, by far the worst. During the Christmas rush, while trying to help a customer get an iPad, some guy interrupts me and asks for specs on the laptops next to it. This guy was obviously an idiot because we were standing right next to the laptop display where the specs are listed on the display. But in an attempt to appease him, I got a laptop so he could read it off the box. At this point, it's obvious he doesn't even know what he's even asking for. I tired to finish up with the customer that he cut in front of. When I went to go ring her up, he irritated asked me, "Where are you going?" as if I was supposed to come to his beck and call. "Sir, this woman was first, and I'm trying to ring her up. If you can give me a couple of minutes, I'll be right back with you." Are you giving me attitude? Honest to God, I was not, "Sir, I'm not giving you attitude, but if you'd like, I'll get a manager to help you out." Yeah, get them and whoever's above them. 2 hours later, I'm called into the back office, immediately being terminated. No coaching or anything. The zone manager refused to give me a definitive answer as to why I was being terminated other than, "It's just not working out." Bullcrap. I honestly believe 99% of all my customer interactions were genuinely positive, and the funny thing is, that zone manager even witnessed many of them. I didn't take a genius to figure out that accusing me of giving him attitude fabricated a story about me painting me to be disrespectful little crap. What was even more infuriating is the git lying about my disrespectfulness was laughing it up with a buddy after they told their lie to my manager. To this day, I still shop at that store location, but if I ever see a customer being an absolute to one of the store associates, I'm not waiting for a manager to come by only to tell them that the customer was in the wrong. I will straight up chew that customer out and tell them to give the associate a break. They bust their ass and constantly take crap from customers, and they don't need any more of it. Story 13. This is my Walmart story. I'm a high-functioning individual with muscular dystrophy, Charcot-Marie tooth if you want the specifics, and I was offered a job in electronics due to that fact. I would help customers in stock shelves because other than TVs, everything is light enough for me to move. One day I'm walking to work. I'd like to use my muscles while I have them living only 3 houses away from work. And I fall in the parking lot before I clock in. I fall constantly, and most of the time I get up bruised and move on with my life. This time I had, not knowingly, hit my kneecap, which put me in an extraordinary amount of pain. I wanted to tough it out and work, but I only got halfway through my shift before the constant standing hurt too much. I went to management and told them I needed to go home and why. They made me fill out the paperwork for the accident report and sent me home. When I got home, I scheduled a doctor's appointment and went there to get my knee checked out. The doctor checked everything out, no breaks, etc. So he gave me a doctor's note and a day off to rest. When I arrived back at work, I gave the note to her and she called a manager because I went to the doctor for something that happened on Walmart property. I explained that I was off the clock, and that wasn't necessary. One of the assistant managers walks over and gives me a lame, long-winded, half-assed excuse on why it's policy that they substances test me after an accident. I use medical marijuana for pain, and I didn't need to get fired over my medicine. I re-explained myself that it doesn't have to do with them. I'm not taking workers' comp, and I just want to have yesterday's absinthe. The assistant manager insists that I take a substances test, and after that I'll be in the clear and can move on with our lives. I refuse because I didn't want to, and I knew they weren't going to fire the only guy who could use the cell phone dashboard for Verizon and at. They tell me that they can't force me to take the substances test, but they don't want anything to happen in the future that could make work. I ignore this mafia-style tactic and go back to the sales floor. My next week's schedule comes out, and I see I'm working overnights for the next 2 weeks. I've never done overnights and no intention to due to the nature of the work and the fact I was taking morning classes at college. I find a member of management, the same one who tried to go Godfather on me, and he explains that a store 1 hour away needs help remodeling. I explain to him that I'm not a remodeler and that I'm not strong enough. I'm also taking classes at 8 a.m. and wasn't signed on for anything other than electronics. He explains it's only 2 weeks and I'll be stocking shelves no more than what I was doing in my area. Feeling like I had no options, I go to the store that night at 10 p.m. and find the manager in charge and ask what I'll be stocking and where. She says to me, "Stocking? I don't need anyone to stock. I need shelves built in the new expansion." I tell her that it's beyond my ability without getting hurt or going my own speed. She retorts with, "Why did they send you then?" I work out the night with odd jobs like sweeping and moving carriages of stock to the zones they need to be. End of the night, she tells me not to come back and she'll call my store to let them know. I rush to school that morning and sleep most of the afternoon before I go to Walmart asking what my new shift looked like. I get told that me not working there embarrassed our store and that finding someone willing to go was difficult in a pinch. He says I can work on days again, but I'll be in a different department. My schedule goes from 30 hours a week to 12 and I'm putting produce. But the only thing they let me do is put the rotten fruit in the garbage disposal. Literally, made a new job of fruit chucker for me and cut my hours down to I can't pay my bills at all level. Soon after, I got a real job at and resigned dressed in my new uniform. Story 14. I used to be an assistant manager with Walmart, and they had no desire to let me be a decent and compassionate manager. The reason I wanted to get into management was simple. There was this kid, maybe 7, whose parents used to drop him off and leave for an hour or two. He'd grab a cart and mess up toys and pretty much just be an annoyance. One night, we saw him walking around with a hit lip, sobbing. We knew there was no parents to page for, so we took him to electronics, put on Finding Nemo, and a couple of the girls cleaned him up, while a friend and I went to find a manager. When we did and explained the situation, one of those idiot managers said, "I didn't hear a code white, accident, or a code Adam. Not my problem." I thought I would be a way better manager than this git, so I applied and got in. I learned a lot from that company. While in training, they said when you're doing your rounds to engage your associates. Give them the impression that you care about their personal lives. Think about that for a minute. Give them the impression. These exact words were used. Another term they used more times than I stomach to remember was coach or be coached. They actually told me that in order to keep myself out of trouble, to find an associate under me to take the heat. So if I give misdirection to my department manager, I should write them up to avoid getting written up myself. In turn, that department manager could find one of their associates, if they delegated the task, to pass the buck to. It's the true definition of crap rolling downhill. It's truly a disgusting position to be in. To jeopardize someone's job, pay to save your own skin. Shortly after my being promoted, the store manager was fired. He and the head of loss prevention were beginning to have feelings for each other, so she, loss prevention led, transferred so they could continue their relationship. He was let go because they felt him being involved with her was an integrity issue, even though they did the right thing by holding off. After that, it was a witch hunt for all management. Many quit due to the investigations. My one co-manager was on the verge of being fired, but she cried to me in the office because I didn't get the training I deserved, and it was unfair to me being out into that position. She was concerned for me when she was facing the guillotine. She was the best part of that job. Another friend of mine became a manager in that store a year or two later and stepped down sooner than I did. She said it was the most corrupt and deceitful place she's ever worked. I've worked in 4 different stores, and they were all pretty cutthroat when it came to manager. There were cliques, but if you aren't in them, they'd turn on you in a heartbeat. I stepped down from that job because I couldn't be the person they wanted me to be, and it was affecting my health. I wasn't eating or sleeping well, working 14, 18-hour shifts, 6 days a week while doing computer work at my local Walmart on the 7th. Because I couldn't get it done at my new store without interruptions, driving 51 miles to get to my store, another 51 to get home. Many times, I would snap to, not even realizing I fell asleep at the wheel several miles from when I last remember. That is a terrifying feeling. I used to drive to work, thinking if I hit that tree, I won't have to go to work today. Not thinking about getting hurt or having to replace my car, just thinking of getting away from work for a day. My doctor actually forced me to take a 3-month leave of absence due to anxiety and depression. If I didn't take it voluntarily, he and my wife were going to have me committed. I never felt so low in my life, before or since. I guess not all the stores are as bad as the one I was in, but most of the managers I've talked to have anxiety disorders and depression, except those total a-hole ones that have no issue being an idiot. I no longer work for that company, but I still keep in touch with managers, associates I worked with. Sometimes they still need someone to talk to that actually understand. Story 15. I sprained my back moving product in the back. At first, I thought it was a pulled muscle and walked towards the pharmacy to try and buy a heating pads and some Tylenol. I made it to jewelry, barely keeping conscious from the pain. I asked my coworker to call management and let them know I had hurt myself pretty badly and needed to go to the hospital. Management told her to have me go to the back office to fill out paperwork. I blacked out twice going back and was yelled at for taking so long. I ended up being out for a month and a half for the injury and got a whopping $24 in workman's comp. Because the second I got hurt, my hours were reduced to 1 hour a week. I hate Walmart. Story 16. Once I had a woman who was giving me a hard time about a coupon that was expired. Coupon people are the worst. She refused to give up. She really wanted that $1 off. My line was really getting long and I was getting really frustrated. So I reached in my pocket and pulled out a 5 and said, "If I give you a 5, will you give up on this coupon?" She got pissed and said, "I can't believe you said that to me." She told the CSM, but I didn't get in trouble for it. Story 17. Worked overnight there for 2 years. All my horror stories involve one Black Friday. Black Friday, 2008. I am a fairly large chap, so I was assigned to guard this stack of new flat-screen TVs. My store was supposed to be sent 12. We only received 4, and one was damaged and unsellable. By the time 5 a.m. rolls around, there are no fewer than 30 people locked onto these TVS like vultures. They drop the ropes, the madness begins, and I get brushed. The guy who ends up getting the last one is someone who makes me look like Peter Dinklage, and he actually lays down on top of the box to claim it. I start saying, "That's all, folks. Move on." And most people get the hint and start finding new crap to buy. Then from behind me, this little old lady, standing at a daunting 5 feet 2 inches and weighing in at about 100 pounds, shoves her way through the crowd, throwing bows like Ronda Rousey. She bends down and begins to attempt to channel her inner Wonder Woman and tries to move the TV out from under the Andre the Giant doppelganger. I laugh to myself and tell her that he has it claimed and she should please move on. Not to be deterred, she then reaches her arm across the TV box to adjust her position and try harder. Fezzik uses his hand to get her arm out of his face. She screams, yells, "Oh, he just bit me!" and proceeds to attempt to file charges with the local constabulary. They laughed at her because apparently she had a history of pulling crazy stunts like same night, but this event occurred in the electronics department by the video game. A buddy of mine was in charge of running that CF. He was not such a large chap. Think Steve Rogers pre-serum. But he was a veteran of past Black Fridays, so he knew what he was doing. The glass containing the new games was left open, and at around 4:55, one customer who was about my size shoved my coworker out of the way in an attempt to get a better spot, saying something like, "Get out of my way, idiot," or something equally derogatory that decent people typically refrain from saying to customer service work. What he didn't know was that my diminutive coworker was also a combative instructor for the National Guard. He politely helped the customer to the ground, got back up, closed the game case, locked it, and went to find the manager, who politely asked the customer to get the hell out of the store. Again, same Black Friday. It was an eventful night morning, different part of the store. For this story, we moved to the front of the store. Another coworker buddy of mine is assigned to hold the rope up at the front and let them drop at 5 a.m. This particular coworker looks like what can only be described as a Mexican Super Mario. One of the managers made an announcement over the intercom that basically served as a 2-minute warning at 4:58. Of course, there was somebody that just had to set their watch 2 minutes ahead, and that person says, "But it's 5 o'clock." A hush fell over the crowd, like the deep breath before the plunge. My friend manages to hold off the onslaught of humanity until it actually was 5, then lets the rope drop. Some genius had decided to bring their 5-year-old girl to this event. Brilliant idea. And then proceeds to abandon said helpless child in a greed-driven rush to fulfill all their wildest dreams of cheap DVDs and clothing made by only the finest sweatshops Asia has to offer. This poor girl winds up tripping and would have been trampled under the herd of cattle. I mean, completely orderly gathering of paying customers. If my coworker had not gone down with her and shielded her with his body, sustaining a shopping cart to the ribs and several inadvertent kicks from customer. Thankfully, everyone was okay. These are my tales from purgatory. And people ask me, but it's Christmas time. Why can't you be holly jolly like everyone else? To which I reply simply, bah, humbug. Story 18. 4 hours into my first shift, I was facing items on a bottom shelf while a coworker was facing items on the top shelf. She dropped a gallon of Gatorade on my head. Management refused to let me report the injury or leave to seek medical attention. I finished the shift dazed and in pain. The next day, I found out my skull was hitting. Officially, since I was not allowed to report the injury, it didn't happen at work. I rage quit. Story 19. I was still working the customer service counter, and we had this guy roll in with a very large stereo system box on top of a shopping cart. This guy pushing the cart is very thin, sweating, and quite obviously on something. I know this is going to go badly. There's a policy at Walmart, or the one that I worked at anyway, that electronics must be cleared by someone from that department before we accept any returns. I page electronics to the front of the store, and as we're waiting, the guy with the return begins to sway and loses the little bit of color he had. With this, I have a gut feeling that this is about to go really badly, so I page security too. Security and electronics arrive about the same time, and as they begin to open the box, this guy goes down and begins convulsing on the floor. Security calls 911, and I use another phone to page the manager. Well, the manager arrives and decides that it simply will not do to have a customer convulsing on the floor for everyone to see. So he tells the security guy to help him move the guy to the back office. They couldn't move him until he stopped seizing, and once he did, they sat his unconscious body in an office chair and wheeled him back. EMTs arrived a few minutes later, and they were not amused that he was moved. They scooped and ran with the guy. When we opened the boxes finally, they were full of rocks. There was nothing in the boxes to return. Story 20. I'm a former Asda employee. Asda is the UK equivalent of Walmart. It's owned by Walmart and basically is our version of Walmart here. Oddly enough, I actually had a decent time working there. I was very lucky. My main gripe was the highly unsociable hours, always having to work weekends and thus never being able to do anything with my friends who worked typical 5-office jobs. The UK keeps a lockdown on companies like Walmart. They can't exploit their workers in the same way the American Walmart can. Unions here are encouraged. Worker rights are a big deal. They always did their best to accommodate our needs. If I said I needed Tuesday nights to be free, they'd find a way to make that happen even if it wasn't instant. They at least did it, provided I made a big enough racket about it. It definitely wasn't the worst company in the world to work for. Holidays were always honored, and since I always worked Mondays, I earned a lot of extra holiday time on the virtue that I worked many bank holidays. I also got paid extra for working those bank holiday Mondays. Like the US Walmart, though, UK will keep all their employees part-time. Only full-time employees are essentially grandfathered, or they are section leaders or managers. Being a section leader or a manager at an Asda is a very stressful job. One guy even fainted on the job where I worked because the stress just got to him. I knew I never wanted to get promoted there. It just wasn't worth it. I may have been on low pay as a grunt, but at least I had free time and could forget about work as soon as I walked out of the door at the end of my shift. I did spend a lot of time with our cleaners, though. Our Asda aces, who were actually employed by a separate entity known as Asda City. They worked in the store, they cleaned, but they didn't enjoy the same benefits as a normal Asda employee did. For example, Asda Aces didn't get a discount card. The discount card is a Walmart thing that means you get a 10% discount at all Walmart stores. I had one. But my Asda Ace co-workers did not because they were technically employed by Asda City. Asda Aces work inside the store, and like the rest of us, they were expected to help customers if asked. So why they didn't get the same benefits we did, I'll never know. They also had to deal with lovely situations, such as angry football fans literally smearing the store bathrooms with crap because their team lost. No protective gear either. No nothing. This was on little more than minimum wage. Biohazardous situation when you have to deal with human feces on the walls and haven't even got a mask for it. Asda employees get an okay deal. I never had a real issue, but our cleaners get a really damn raw deal. And it makes me furious because they're the people keeping the Asda stores clean and presentable. They're the ones being sent in to deal with disgusting human waste and other harmful situations without appropriate equipment. We're talking about old ladies here too, not young fit people. Of course it's all connected to Walmart, so they're involved in letting this happen somehow. The cleaning staff are getting the raw deal for a reason. Insufficient equipment, insufficient help from management, insufficient communication, no discount benefit, no nothing. The Asda aces at Asda need to be helped. They're considered outside help, and it's disgraceful. Customers are just as likely to ask them for help as the rest of us. Damn Asda, honestly. Crap company when it comes to treating employees fairly, especially the Asda aces. Story 21. A friend of mine was working part-time at Walmart. He'd been there for over a year, was working any and all positions, shifts they threw at him so he could try to provide for his wife and, unexpected, new baby. He started to apply for any and all full-time positions as they really needed the benefits. One day, management took him aside and told him this was not the Walmart way, and he needed to make a plan with steps on how to get to a particular position. Apparently, anything full-time is not okay. Walmart wants to help you achieve your specific goals. Story 22. Not a Walmart employee, but we had a homeless guy pass standing up taking a piss in a urinal. He somehow got wedged in between the barriers that separate urinals. Story 23. My store is pretty crafty, in that whenever it rains, there are various ceiling leaks around the store that I have to strategically place mop buckets around to catch the rain in. We've also had guys working on the ceiling outside. Well, I guess they had knocked a pipe loose or something, because when I arrived at work, there was water all over the floor of the fixture room upstairs. It took 3 guys from receiving and me starting early to get it all cleaned. It took about 45 minutes. Fast forward about 3 hours of me, the only maintenance guy, because 3 guys had quit within the past month and they're too cheap to hire, doing my usual routine of bringing in carts and working as a stocker and working in foods and receiving. When I notice water is leaking into the back room in a couple of places, I go up the stairs labeled, "Employees must use other stairway," I imagine due to the exposed moldy walls within, and water is running down the stairs. I get up there and the entire fixture room is flooded with about 2 inches of water, leaking past some bags of soil a manager half-assedly threw down to solve the problem. So I frantically begin to mop what I can and put down some large plastic bins to hold the water coming in from the ceiling. A huge bin would fill in about 4 minutes. That's how much water was coming in. Long enough for me to go let a manager know we had an emergency. So I go and tell him what's going on. He grudgingly gets up and follows me to the fixture room. He sees the flooded room, goes, "Yep, so what could we do different here?" I give him a blank look from the wet ladder I'm standing on, trying to swap out a bin before it's too full to move. I tell him we need people up here right away to help me get this under control. He comes back with 2 flower pots, puts them on the rack underneath the overflowing bins of water, and says, "That should do it for a while. We really need you out there getting carts," and walks away. At this point, I'm damn dumbfounded and trying to figure out if I need the job this much to keep dealing with this bullcrap. I'm about 2 hours past my lunch, drenched from getting carts in the rain. The store has 1 raincoat, and it's torn almost in half and small enough to fit a 12-year-old, with no managers apparently understanding that there's a damn crisis occurring. So I say, damn it, and I clock out for lunch and go sit in the break room, which at this rate will also be flooded within the hour as it's just down the hall. About 20 minutes into my break, the manager comes and asks what I'm doing. I tell him I'm on my lunch, finally. 5 minutes later, he sends 6 guys from varying departments in to mop up the flood. They work their asses off and get it under control. 2 weeks later, I get 2 shining stars for my fast reaction to the flood. And those 6 guys who actually fixed it didn't get crap. Though I did offer them some foot-long Twizzlers after the job was done. Story 24. I worked for Walmart for only 2 weeks and got the hell out of there because of how I was treated by the employers. When I did my interview, everything seemed as if it would be okay, and instead of a cashier position that I was being interviewed for, I was made a sales associate in the lawn and garden department. Keep in mind, I know nothing about landscaping, grilling, or herbicides and pesticides, so I was pretty crap at helping customers. I thought that I would learn about the stuff in training, but all they teach you on their online training module is how to clean up spills so they don't get sued, how to keep yourself safe by using proper lifting techniques and box cutter safety, so they can say they demonstrated proper use so they can't get sued, and how to become a mindless Walmart slave. I swear the amount of emphasis in the training program placed on Sam Walton, the company's founder or whatever, makes it seem as though he's a damn demigod. I could not believe the hard-on that these people had for spreading the message that the dear Sam Walton wanted to give to the customer. Also, The orientation program includes watching a video telling you not to join a union. They use actors in their video to make it seem as though having a union is a bad thing because they don't want to pay someone to tell Walmart what they want, and that their open door policy with the management is much better. Of course, by open door policy, you can enter the door, but the management wouldn't give me the time of day. When I applied, I said I only wanted 24 hours maximum, since I'm a student on summer break, and I'm not trying to make a living right now, just enough to buy an Xbox. So when the manager gave me 40 hours instead, I told him that I could not work that much. He said he would consider reducing the hours after I was told in the interview that I would get 3 8-hour days a week. Then when he told me they were not going to change how much I was working, I complained to him that this wasn't what I signed up for and that I was being overworked as a lawn and garden associate. All I could do for 8 hours was walk around and try to help customers as best as I can. But when they asked about the specifics of a lawnmower and I couldn't get someone else to help them, I was cussed out and yelled at because I wasn't trained properly for the job. I would be exhausted after 8 hours, and like I said, I never signed up for full-time hours at part-time pay. So when I asked about my schedule, he said I was selfish for not taking the hours that I was given, and that I should consider myself lucky for getting to work a 40-hour week. I replied that he was selfish for working me more than what I agreed to, and that if I didn't get a change, I would leave right now. And that's how I left Walmart. I know that I didn't work for very long, but I wasn't going to put up with that crap if I didn't have to. Story 25. I was working at Walmart at the beginning of this year. Aside from weird older men hitting on me, it wasn't that bad. A few weeks before the minimum pay was raised, they decided I needed a new position in the store. I was told that I was great with people and needed to be out helping customers as opposed to checking. Sales associates get paid less than cashiers. They told me that. Since it was basically a promotion for me, that they would let me keep the cashier pay instead of lowering me to sales pay. I agreed to the job for that reason. Plus, new job was full-time. A week later, they take me to sign the papers for the job switch, and the manager gets to the pay part. He says, "I know we told you that you could keep the same pay, but it's just easier to make it the same as everyone else's. Besides, everyone's pay is going up in a few weeks anyway." So I just agreed. Whatever's still going to be making more. Then my hours start getting cut. I agreed to 40 hours. I was cut down to 25. My manager said he messed up the schedule on accident and would fix it. It continued happening every week. I finally got so frustrated I just left one day and never came back. Story 26. I remember the day I quit Walmart was when I realized the position I was in was not worth the money they would pay me. I was a connection center manager. Photolab also ran toys since there was no manager. I was okay. This is my first job out of high school. Not so bad, I'm already a manager. Crap hit the fan after a year. They fired the electronics manager and still no toys manager, so I had to pick up the extra work. All I looked forward to was that quarterly bonus we would receive if sales were high, so I worked my ass off to make sure we would get that. Keep in mind, this is for the whole store. All department. Sales were amazing. We were in the positives. The quarter ends and we get the bad news that the store didn't meet its sales criteria and no one was getting the bonus. Well, crap, the rest of the store must have sucked, so not so bad. Can't be my fault I worked so hard. Maybe people just aren't buying like they used to. Well, the last straw was when I got called into the office to congratulate me on amazing sales in the connection center department, which is where we sold cell phone contracts. Went down like this. Store manager: "Hey, Grim004, great work in connection center. You made the store a total of $26,000 in commission for the month and kept down fraud sales." Me, no way, that's great. Does that mean that I get some type of bonus? Store manager: No, the store didn't hit sales criteria. Me, I know, but I overexceeded sales. That should count for something. Store manager: Look, Walmart's a team, and if the team fails, you fail. So if Walmart gave you a bonus, how would that look? I looked at home, dumbfounded. I didn't care that I didn't get money. I was just so pissed that they look at everything as a whole. I went in and resigned the next day, didn't give them 2 weeks notice, just said I'm done. 3 days later, I get hired by a cellular company where I make 4x as much annually than I would at Walmart. The kicker was that 2 weeks later at my new job, the co-manager calls me saying if I'm going to be back from vacations. I was like, I quit 2 weeks ago, actually, and she lost it. She was all you need to come in to get your last check. I go in the next day to get my check, and the store manager is talking to the co-manager about moving such and such pallet and sees me and says, "Get Grim004 to help." I say, "I'm here for my last check. I quit 2 weeks ago." Store manager: "You were serious?" I thought to myself I didn't show up to work for 2 weeks. I think you should have fired me. All I did was smile and say, "I'm dead serious." Story 27. I worked for Walmart for 3 months, figured I could start a new career in retail and earn my way up to management through Walmart to get my experience. One guy had a debit card with a chip, and he didn't know the PIN. I said it needs to have the PIN to work, and he kept saying, "Just swipe it instead." Swipe didn't work. So he said, "Your machine is the problem, not my card. Type in the numbers, it'll work. I said, sir, this is a debit card. Punching the numbers in won't work. Yes, it will just do it. Fine, so I go ahead and of course it doesn't go through. And he says to me, so what do you plan to do about it then? As if I should damn do anything. He's blaming me and the machine for him not knowing the PIN. I took his product from the counter and put it behind me. Told him to have a good day, sir. 2. Once I was called up to the front to assist with checkouts as it was very busy. I hadn't been on front tills before, but it was of course very straightforward. Simple job. I was doing fine, and then the latest to my till paid for her stuff and left. The next person in line was just standing there staring at me. There were no groceries on the belt, and I said, how may I help you? She just stood there and stared at me. Not a word. Then she started glaring as her eyes got wider. And I'm just like, what the heck is going on? I hadn't turned on the belt, and she placed it all at the end and was just waiting for me to figure it out on my own. When I realized what was happening, I smiled and said, oh, sorry, I forgot to turn the belt back on. Still no words from her throughout the entire transaction. What a 3. When I was 3 months in, they did what they called an appraisal. I was a pretty good employee, and as far as I could tell, worked harder than anyone else in my area. I was a quick learner too, already training others and helping customers with anything. I received a 3 in every category. I learned it was out of 5, so it's as though they didn't even try to evaluate me. They just said I was average. I'm better than damn average. I'm awesome, and everyone likes me, and I work damn hard all day. I told them to make most of them 5s and throw a 4 here and there. They disagreed. So I quit on the spot. Went back to my old career, making more than twice as much the next day. Screw Walmart, dude. Screw 'em. Story 28. I worked at Walmart for a total of 6 months. I started when they were building the new Super Walmart, when we already had one in our small town that was good enough in my opinion, which is now an empty Walmart and a ghost town of a parking lot. Anyway, I was put in the meat department and the deli was right beside our department, and I would go over every now and then and talk to my lady friends for a minute and then go and do my work again. But one day, as I went over, all the deli ladies were over there with one cooked rotisserie chicken. Now, it was almost the end of all of our shifts, and the chicken was to be thrown away, so they asked if I would like to have some, since they were all sharing it between each other. Of course, I agreed, because hey, free chicken. Anyway, as I was chowing down on the leg, a manager walks in and looks directly at me and says, hey, you can't be doing that, and walks out. So me, being the guilty-minded guy that I am, goes to the back after clocking out and offer to pay for the chicken. We have a conversation, and it ends with me being suspended until further investigation is done. 2 weeks later of me constantly calling to see if I still have my job, they finally tell me to come in for a meeting with some guy from security. So I go in, and the manger a hole, mob, and security idiot, SI, are both sitting there skipping through most of the convo Psi. So I have reviewed the footage and seen all of you eating that sandwich M. It wasn't a sandwich, it was a chicken that I'm more than willing to pay for. I just want to get back to work. Sigh. Right. So I have reviewed the footage and seen all of you eating the chicken and just want you to tell me who else was eating the food. AM. If you have already seen who was eating it, then why do you need me to tell you? Meh. We just need you to tell him for confirmation, M. Look, can I just pay for the chicken, May? Yes, you can, but we will come to that in just a moment, M. Okay, can you tell me if I still have a job here? Ma. Unfortunately, at this time, your termination will be effective immediately, M. So for the last 2 weeks, I could have been looking for another job so I could be making money. Ma. Which brings me to the chicken ordeal. We are going to be charging you 42 for the chicken M. That doesn't make sense. I only ate 1 MA. Well, it shows here that there were multiple chickens, so I turn in my badge and go on my way. A few weeks later, a friend of mine in the deli informed me that the very same manager comes in from time to time and eats some chicken. Now I work in tech support for a tax software and have full-time and benefits and very caring manager. Story 29. Years ago, I worked for a large department store chain. We'll just say the Blue Vest Mafia. In my time there, I had job responsibilities that ranged from cashier to maintenance. This tale involves the latter. So there I was, alone in a rather dead store, aside from a handful of shoppers, when out of nowhere, the women's bathroom, a middle-aged woman came rushing up to me. She looked very concerned and rather panicked, and immediately began requesting that I locate a female employee for her. I was a little confused and intrigued, but I went to the customer service desk and grabbed the only free female cashier available. We returned to the nice lady who, again very panicky, shoved a 100 bill into my coworker's hand and asked that she go find some clothes for her mother. It didn't take long to figure out where this was headed. So my coworker and the nice lady went in search of clothing, and I collected every cleaning tool, chemical, and protection wear I could find. I radioed the manager and let them know I would unavailable and why, then returned to the scene. The manager also appeared shortly, and my coworker had already returned while the nice lady was in the bathroom with her mother. After roughly several minutes, the two women emerged from the bathroom, with the older lady sporting an awesome new wardrobe. She was crying and kept repeating, I knew I shouldn't have eaten Chinese. It would have been funny if she weren't crying so much. The nice lady thanked my coworker, who was just about to walk away when my manger stopped her. He told her I couldn't clean the women's bathroom during business hours, but I would help mark off the area. She looked like he had just reached into her very soul and destroyed her spirit. It was worse than defeat. She almost looked scared, and she had every right to be. I helped her wheel in the cleaning cart, and what I saw can only be described as a crap-pocalypse. It wasn't just on the walls and floor. It was outside the stall, all over the toilet, and even on the ceiling. I didn't know that was even possible. It looked like this woman got into a fight with her sphincter and lost. My coworker and I both began gagging immediately. I quickly blocked off the entrance and threw down some wet floor signs. My coworker had the posture and look of someone about to take on an army armed with a pellet gun. She cleaned the bathroom for more than an hour, and when she finally finished, she looked worn and ragged, like someone who had seen some crap. Pun intended. Story 30. 2 stories for you. 1. I worked in electronics, and one day this sketchy kid came up to me asking for a game out of the game case. He just seemed off, like someone that smoked just a bit too much that day. But who am I to judge? I grab his game, he then says he'll take it up front. Store policy is that they have to pay for it in the department, so I tell him and he continues to sketch all the way to the register with awkward small talk. At the register, I ring it up, tell him the total, and he reaches into his wallet to hand me the most pathetic attempt at a forged bill I've ever seen. He scanned a 100, printed the front on one piece of paper, printed the back on another piece, and stapled them together. Stapled the edges weren't even cut properly, as you could see white along the border. I just looked at the guy and said, seriously? He made up some story of someone slipping it into his wallet by accident and walked off. I stood there in disbelief, turned to my coworker who watched the whole thing and asked, what the heck just happened? 2. Same department. This guy comes in on a busy day and I start ringing him up for all kinds of stuff from around the store, including the newly released PS2 and GameCube. Yeah, I worked there a lifetime ago. He writes a check, and I proceed to process it in our little machine. It comes back with a suspicious error, so I tell him the machine is acting weird and outside of earshot. I call a manager over. He starts getting visibly nervous as a few CSMS, cashier mangers, come over and inspect the check. They ask him a few questions, take the check, and disappear, stating they need to run it on a different register and that there's nothing to worry about, and they'll be right back. After a few minutes, he is sweating bullets and eventually starts slowly making his way out of electronics. His pace quickens until he's full on running for the door. I watch him from the register because, damn it, I'm not breaking a sweat for minimum wage, and bam, our big-ass Samoan security guy tackles him to the ground, picks him up, and escorts him up front. At this point, I tell a coworker to take over the register, and I head up front to see what else happens. I just had a feeling. I get there to see the guy meet up with the CSMS that took the check, a handful of managers. They present the check to him, ask where he got it, and before anyone could react, he lunges forward, grabs the check. Dude, 8. Check. They wrestle with the guy a little and bring him into the back room. Customers and staff alike were staring in disbelief as to what just occurred. I found out later that the guy was traveling from Walmart to Walmart across state borders, passing bogus checks. So yeah, normal stuff. Story 31. I worked as an overnight stalker when the store was closed. I did my best work every night. Eventually, they moved me from the little baby aisles and give me giant aisles like paper goods, chemicals, juice, and water aisles. Eventually, they expected me to do entire sections of the store in 8 hours. They estimate how much time it's supposed to take in a computer program. You know the price scanners? Scan an employee badge there and it brings up a job interface. I would have liked 1 hour to do 2+ pallets, but during training, they said it should take 40 minutes per pallet. The problem was they would bring back yesterday's overstock, but not make a job for it. So your job is to do the stock that you got in during truck and the overstock. Then you would get in trouble when you couldn't make the ridiculous time quotas. So when they tell me to do automotive, hardware, sporting goods, and toys in 8 hours, and I have both the new stock and old stock 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't finish. Then when I was good enough to actually finish most or all of that work, they would send me to help other people get work done. At one point, they had me doing the pets aisle. It wouldn't have been bad if not for the cat cans and super small bags of dog treats. That aisle never ever got done. They would bring out 4 decently sized pallets to start. Then you'd get 2 done and they bring 2 more out. Then you get 2 more done and they bring even more out again. That aisle only ever got finished by 2 employees. It wasn't that bad until one day I had to do frozen and dairy. You can only have the pallets out for 30 minutes at a time, and they are huge pallets. You have to work extremely fast to get it all done. So within 30 minutes, you need to take the pallet out of the freezer, bring it to the floor, pack the entire thing out, then put it back in the freezer. In 30 minutes, I quit shortly after this seeing, as I was getting paid $10 an hour to do half the store's work because over half of the employees were too damn lazy to do anything. What would take me 30 minutes would take another employee an hour and a half sometime. Also, they would constantly change your schedule without saying anything, and if you didn't show up, you got in trouble. Somebody actually got fired for not showing up a couple of times because of what they did. The secret to not getting in trouble was to take a picture of the schedule. Since they all had week X on the top, so you had proof that you weren't supposed to work and it got altered. They also don't tell you if you got fired, so you come into work expecting to work and can't clock in anymore. Story 32. I worked at Walmart about 13 years ago at one of the few stores left that closed overnight. It was a regular old Walmart, not at all super. I worked overnight, stocking. I liked it. I only dealt with customers for a couple hours before the store closed and then just stocked the shelves. I mainly worked in the automotive department, and the nights would go by really fast. I worked with a bunch of people who were related to each other. There was the dad, Steve, his wife's sister, and his stepdaughter who worked there during the day in the jewelry department. Steve stocked the sporting goods department, right next to mine. This guy was really gross. He would constantly pop over to my section and ask me if I needed help lifting stuff up onto the overstock shelves. And he would make comments about how pretty I was and how if he was 10 years younger, he'd date me. I just laughed off his comments, say I didn't need help, and that I was perfectly happy with my boyfriend. Thank you. One night, he decided to tell me how big his junk was. I was dumbfounded, and I did not know what to say. I just said, "Oh, well, I gotta get back to work," and kind of shuffled away. A week later, he was caught having sex with his wife's sister in the bathroom at work. They were both fired, his wife quit, and his stepdaughter continued to work there. Story 33. There was black mold in the dairy cooler. And I don't mean just a little patch. I mean all the way along the yogurt wall. The manager who was asked to clean it claimed he did. So naturally, the higher-up management went to check his work. He hadn't even touched it. They ended up having to stand in there watching him disinfect the cooler from top to bottom. This was a well-known addict, and it was too gross for him. A coworker witnessed one of the day shift meat department workers take a piece of meat that was almost green out of claims and put it back on the shelf. On top of that, for a good 3 months, you could smell the expired meat from outside the meat cooler. Story 34. I can answer this. We have a couple of, strange employees here. I'm changing the names to give some privacy. There's Crazy Candace, a 60-year-old senile woman who works in a department involving, I don't know where she works, as I've never seen her in one department. I occasionally see her pushing carts for zoning around the store, making these weird gruntings. So now that I'm off work, let me tell you about Alex. Alex is a short greeter who rides around on a mobility scooter. He whistles and sings his whole shift. He's not really weird. He's probably my favorite coworker. And Francesca, my coworker from one of the more French provinces. Really eccentric and doesn't care what people think. She was a math teacher, and for fun at the till, she'll add prices together. She's crazy good at math. It kind of scares me. I don't really have any horror stories, just strange coworkers and some relatively benign stories. I was in the back room doing picks one wonderful night. It was the 23rd of December, and I hear a cart rolling into the back room. I look to see which of my coworkers it is, and it's two men pushing a shopping cart full of stuff. I say, "Excuse me, you aren't," and they book it for the exit. There was a truck parked at the exit waiting for these guys. They got away with a printer, a PS4, some dumb duck let them have it instead of making them pay at Photo Center, some clothing, and DS games. Now I have one more story from when I was working in toys. I'm now a garden center associate. I was walking to the back bulk plastic shelf, and I hear the sound of plastic crinkling. So I go into loss prevention mode and investigate the noise. A little girl had a frozen doll pack and was violently trying to get Elsa out of it. This girl was probably 5. She sees me, has a deer in headlights moment, drops everything, and sprints away. I pick up what she was trying to steal, and I take it back to claims. On my way back to toys, I hear the crinkling coming from the same spot again, so I appear on the other side of the shelf. She sees me again and starts running towards me while saying, "Ugh, why does this always happen to me?" I wasn't even mad. Story 35. I used to do field service for Walmarts in the Portland, Oregon area. The East Portland stores were especially fun. The Wood Village, Eastport Plaza, and Happy Valley stores are relatively close together, and we techs referred to them as the Gauntlet. The Eastport Plaza store was especially active, and we nicknamed that one Thunderdome. Every visit, we would witness an arrest or something more exciting or disgusting. Last Christmas, for instance, while Frank Sinatra's version of Mistletoe and Holly was playing, a dude was totally face-planted by some cops after resisting arrest, in the process damaging the automatic doors and knocking over a display. Another time, a tech witnessed the arrest of the hottest-looking escort ever on 82 Days Street being cuffed and stuffed in the parking lot. One day, I arrived at Thunderdome and noticed that I could not get to the customer service desk to check in. Several workers were not allowing people to pass, and there were also a number of orange cones marking the restricted area. A quick whiff indicated what my eyes later confirmed: crap all over the floor. The men's room is right next to the customer service area. Eventually, they had to break out the Zamboni machine to finish cleaning up. I had about 10 registers to work on there that day. They beat the hell out of their equipment in that store. And after 2 hours, I was ready to take a leak and check out. They still weren't letting anybody into the men's room. Story 36? No real horror stories per se, but I can dump up some scary crap. I worked back in frozen dairy. Our team was so lazy and stock rotation so neglected that we once found a block of cheddar cheese that had expired over a year before. It was vacuum, so no mold or obvious signs of decay, but definitely not something you'd want to eat. I had a female coworker, pregnant with her third kid, who failed the employment quiz, FAILADD. She had her husband take it for her, and oh, she got hired. A funny one to cleanse the palate. For some reason, the local Latin kings kept tagging the men's room. I'm sorry, but if your gang is so desperate as to want to claim a Walmart bathroom, then maybe you're in the wrong gang. Speaking of bathrooms, once found the toilets in one bathroom covered in crap, as well as the wall, floor, mirrors, sinks. Clearly, someone was inspired by the works of Jackson Pollock and decided to create their magnum opus in excrement. I had an elderly lady on an electric cart back in my department. The battery died while she was going around a corner. They often did on weekends because so many people were using them, so she simply got up and walked away. A week before Christmas, some kid knocked a fire extinguisher off the wall and, according to him, it landed on the handle and foam sprayed everywhere. Per protocol, the fire department came and made everyone evacuate the store. You never saw so many people argue with firefighters telling them to evacuate. In OFC, they all went to the front registers first because they might burn to death, but they'll give the Waltons their money first. Last one. Sorry about that. One of the girls from another department apparently fell in love with me, and I didn't even know their name. She had a face like 10 miles of bad road, an ass so large that it wouldn't fit in the trunk of a VW Beetle, and a mustache that rivaled Tom Selleck's in length and density. Story 37. It's long, but this is how I quit Walmart. I once got a verbal for clocking in 5 minutes early. I once got a verbal because I didn't answer a MGR's question while on break. I got written up for not properly storing a pallet when there was nowhere to physically put it, and I asked the manager where it should go. But that's all just the icing. Now for the cake. I was working overnight as an unloader. Now in general, Walmart trucks are hand-loaded, stem to stern, in lot-sized boxes of everything that's on order. Only oil and water are palletized. So think of just a mishmash of randomly shaped size boxes stacked by hand and driven up to hundreds of miles to the destination. Yeah, the back of the truck is an absolute mess. Now, to unload, you're supposed to have a full crew of 9 people, 4 on each side of the roller line, and 1 in the truck loading things on it. It slides down, and you read the label, match the department range to a pallet, and stack it for you to take out later. You're not allowed to leave until all the trucks that arrived that day are empty. My first shift was 12 hours, and when you hit 40 hours, they ask you if you want to go home. If you don't leave, they start cutting your hours. Now, all of that is explanation to set up this. I'd been working there a few months and all the unloaders, but myself and 2 others were at 40 HRs. So we started the shift with 3 people and 3 trucks. It normally takes a team of 9 people 2 hours to unload a single truck. About 5 hours in, the other 2 unloaders hit their 40 HRs and left, leaving me to unload 3 entire trucks. By myself, I called the TGM to get some support. He says, "No prob, I'll send some right back. Now keep working." An hour goes by and I call him again. He finally shows up himself and goes into the truck to start loading the line, easiest part of the job, and starts shoving boxes down and running them over my fingers. I get pissed, walk into the truck, grab the line, and drag it out of the truck, dropping boxes all over the place, and I close the back of the trailer, clock out. And as I'm leaving, another manager asked me where the GM was. I just told him he was on break, and he said he'd be back in a bit. Then I left, and I never went back. Story 38. Walmart week-long anniversary sale. I bring out a crate of Charmin Ultra Soft that was on sale. A pack of shoppers jump at it. Mom sends her little 5-year-old daughter to squeeze into the crowd. Other lady scratches her and takes her score. Women's washroom. Poop, water, and tissue everywhere. A line of pissed-off ladies forms in under 1 minute after closing off washroom for cleaning. Some guy throws up in aisle 3. Barricade both ends of the aisle to clean up. People still try to squeeze in even with the smell and the visibly disgusting floor. Collecting carts in a parking lot where driving instructors like to take their students. This was before they had that electronic cart pushing thing. People will stand in the middle of the road as they see me coming in with the carts, all the while dragging little Timmy with him. Her. I can't just swerve away from you in that oncoming car, so get out of the way. Some guy makes the perfect spiral poop in the urinal in the men's washroom. Why? How? I left it for the night crew and feigned ignorant. Story 39. I worked on their inventory control specialist crew, which was a fancy way of saying I unloaded the daily trucks and picked back stock for the floor crew to put on the shelves. Been doing that for a little over a year, and while it sucked and my coworkers constantly changed, it was at least steady work for steady pay. Of course, there was always that one manager who just had to ride your ass regardless of how you were actually performing. If you kept up, they just piled more on until they could yell at you for going too slow again. We were expected to do 1 pick per minute, so around 60 per hour. They had assigned me significantly more than that the night before, and as such, when my shift ended, I informed my manager where I was and asked if they would approve the overtime for me to finish my list. The manager said no, they would take care of the last few dozen and sent me home for them. The next day, at the end of my shift, I get pulled aside by a different manager, one I actually got along with just fine, and informed that, unfortunately, I was being let go for failure to maintain my picks per hour. Naturally, I was pissed. I had them pull up the list they printed out, which assigned you your departments for the night and listed the number of picks in them. I counted it up and pointed out that they had actually assigned me about 75 picks per hour in the allotted time. The manager got really quiet and left the room for a few minutes. When he came back, he apologized for the mistake and said that they were giving me another chance. Was not a fan of that at all. On the way out, I happened to see a co-worker doing some shopping before he left and mentioned how I had almost just been fired for failing to keep up. He was unsurprised, as they had done much the same to motivate him. The manager, who had just tried to fire me, happened to walk by around that moment and proceeded to freak out on me for having the balls to discuss such a private matter with another employee. I pretty much just looked at him, shrugged, and said it wasn't something I was embarrassed about and that I had no problem talking about it because I felt like I had been wronged. I quit within the month anyway. Damn you, Walmart. Story 40. Happened before I got hired, but I heard enough about it from co-workers. An elderly couple would come in once a week to go shopping. The old man had troubles walking, so he would kiss his wife and go sit in the fitting room area until she was done. One day they came in and did their little kiss, and he also handed her his wedding ring, like he knew something was about to happen. A couple minutes of sitting there after his wife walked off, the guy collapsed to the floor, and the fitting room ladies called 911. One of the department managers of the time was also a paramedic, so he rushed over. The old guy started to cough up, and every available associate had to come and make a wall of people so customers don't see what is going on. They were trying to find his wife, and no one could find her, and the associates had to wait a half hour for the coroner to get down there and take the body. The associates who saw it still have flashbacks about it. Story 41. The reason I quit Walmart. I had started out at the bottom and worked my way up over 2 long years. I had gotten myself promoted to a department manager, pharmacy, but I was still very close with the cashiers and customer service associates where I had started. As a fairly young and relatively new manager, I wasn't escort and unkind. Yes, when people and other associates walked by me, I said hello. Asked them how they were doing. Evidently, I was one of the few. We had a new maintenance associate in the front who had Down syndrome, so he really appreciated someone being consistently friendly to him. And to be honest, he was a sweet kid and a hard worker. When he was confused or upset, he would usually come to me and ask for clarification, or for me to say something to whoever upset him. One day, I was about to finish my shift, and another associate comes running up to me and says that I'm needed in the back. Evidently, the maintenance guy was crying and wouldn't calm down. I run back there because I know how fragile he is. I reach the back to find 4 salaried members of management surrounding him and yelling at him to get back to work. Actually, legitimately cussing at this kid and yelling. And this kid is a snotty, slobbering, sobbing wreck. I basically told off all the other managers, who were my bosses, and told them to go the duck away. I calm him down, figure out what happened. There was a miscommunication about breaks, and then remind him of the policy and urge him to just do better next time. He hugs me and goes about his day. But I am pissed. This is not how you treat anyone, especially someone with mental disabilities. I get the number for his caseworker, but before he calls me back the next day, upper management fires the poor kid because he violated the break policy. It broke my heart that they broke him down and then just threw him away. I put in my notice 2 days later. Damn Walmart. Story 42. This was like 5 days ago. I still work there. Went into the men's room and there was liquid crap on the wall and dripping down to the floor, like someone literally shot a diarrhea rocket on the wall. I just pretended like I didn't see it and carried on with my day. Story 43. I did not work for Walmart, but for a company that serviced the magazines at Walmart, among others. I would see people open magazines and spit in them and put them back. I would see people ripping out pages and blow their nose with it. People would stick religious and political pamphlets into the mags. I saw one old lady rip the covers off all the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues. Another time, someone kept trying to hide the ESPN body issue, which was frustrating because we were under orders to have them displayed prominently in a specific spot. So I had to find them and reset them about 5 times. Then, of course, the people, who just rip open the magazines in plastic wrap meant to keep something else inside like a CD or DVD and take the product. The best part is even though I had witnessed all of this, our company policy was to not interact or try to stop the customer and to just throw away any damaged product and fix everything and go about our business and to just let the staff at Walmart know, which I did. But I'm sure you can guess what they would do about it, even with the culprit still in the store. Story 44. I've experienced worse situations at other jobs that I've worked, but here's some from working as a cashier at Walmart. Going into the ladies' room for a quick break, I opened the stall door and someone shat all over the toilet, walls, and floor. It was so disgusting, and I felt so horrible for the cleaning person having to clean up after such dirty customers. One day, a woman tried to hand me her credit card, and as per the usual, I informed her that there's a swiping machine that customers use. She proceeded to curse and say, "You people don't treat customers with any respect anymore," and mumble insults under her breath, all because she should have to swipe her card herself, as if she'd never encountered such modern devices. Oh, the horror. Stupidly, I responded, "If you don't like it here, then why do you continue to shop here?" She then proclaimed that she's going to tell my manager of my poor attitude, to which I said, "Good, go for it." After paying, she did just that, and I started crying while helping the next customer, who felt sorry for me and gave me a few words of comfort. Afterward, my manager pulled me aside, asked me if what the lady said was true, and I admitted that it was indeed the truth. He laughed, because we've all dealt with the holes like that, but of course had to tell me that I shouldn't talk like that to customer. Fair enough. I should have known better than to talk back to her, but damn, sometimes it just slips out. At another job, a restaurant I was a manager at, the sink in the women's restroom was filled with vomit. Like an entire sink full of it. So gross. There are toilets in there, I should add. I only ever had problems with management once. All of my problems were due to customers being typical gits. Overall, I actually didn't mind working there, and feel like people target Walmart a bit too much in terms of poor management and bad pay compared to the crap that goes on in other businesses, namely the food industry. Story 45. Every day is something different. I will keep it to the customers because there sure are horror stories with employees and management as well. But one day, an older woman was crapting herself down her leg around the pharmacy area, walked through 3 aisles, and her, what looked like, granddaughter was wiping the watery crap off of her legs and left a watery crap around the floor. Smelled for hours, and I felt bad for the woman because she seemed a little surprised by it. Another customer came in a hurry because she had a taxi outside waiting for her, and demanded assistance picking out tampons after I directed her to another item she was looking for. Well, she never told me what she was looking for, absorbency, brand, etc., despite me asking, and got very upset and loud yelling that I should be fired, and she wanted to talk to my manager, because I was refusing to help her. And around that point, I realized she was drunk as a skunk and there was nothing more I could do. I heard her several minutes later yelling at another employee a few aisles down. A customer accused me of swearing at her to my boss. I told her the policy of pricing for something in the wrong place, and then went back to work. I double-checked the policy with a coworker and get accused of talking about her behind her back. Thing is, she had her little girl in her cart. I take very good care not to swear in front of customers and even more in front of little kids. I had no reason to swear at her. She shopped around for another hour or so and gave me dirty looks thinking I should be fired. People like that just make me sad because how bad is your day? Life that you feel the need to try and get minimum wage employees fired because they gave you an answer you don't like. I'm pretty sensitive, so these encounters took their toll on me those workdays. I had to go to the bathroom to clear my head after. People of Walmart, indeed. Story 46. I was fired from the same store twice by accident. Second time was because a manager had heard I wanted to quit, so they just fired me. While I hated my job, this was the product of another employee who didn't like me just talking crap. Pretty easily fixed, as I needed the income at the time. First time has a much longer story. As a college student and a member of the university marching band, I needed certain Saturdays off to do band performances. I would always submit a list of the days I needed off to the manager in charge of scheduling and assured repeatedly that it wouldn't be a problem. One weekend we had a home game, and I was scheduled anyway. Told the manager as soon as I saw the schedule, and he assured me he would fix it. A week goes by, still no fix. I talk to him again. He apologizes and says he'll fix it as soon as he was done with whatever it was he was doing. As I was off until after that game, I didn't check again. Game comes, game goes. Team loses, badly. And it was about 30 degrees out that day, so I was freezing, exhausted, and could barely talk from yelling throughout the game. Checking my phone after the game, I see that I have a voicemail. Arancluck, I'm not sure if you knew this, but you were scheduled to work today. So I go in, now a few hours after my scheduled shift would have ended, and beeline it right to the manager who assured me, repeatedly, that he would fix the schedule and that I'd have that shift off. He apologizes profusely and goes to the office to fix everything. I go home and think little more of it. I go in for a shift later that week, only to find that I'd been fired for being a no-call, no-show for that Saturday shift. Took a little more to get that crap fixed, but eventually they graciously added me back to the schedule. Not sure what sins of a past life I did to deserve a stint working for Walmart, but I must have been quite the git. Story 47. My time to damn shine. There's a guy at my store, he's still there, God only knows why, who is by far and away the most disgusting person I've ever known. His name is Mike. I'd use an alias, but it's important later. Also, important to note, we worked overnight shift. He transferred in from another store, and we'd heard that he was great, which was good because we always need more decent people, right? When he came in his first night, we all noticed immediately he was mentally challenged by the way he walked and his awkward build. He's an adult. He drives himself. He's coherent. No big deal, right? Wrong. He reeks of crap. All the time. The first 3 months, no one could speak to him without making a sour face. Weirdest part was it would fade from time to time, leading the theory that he wore a diaper. One night, someone grabbed a support manager, lowliest form of manager for anyone who doesn't know, and just pointed. He had a brown streak across his bottom. He had literally crapped himself and just smiled and kept going. Another time shortly after, he was walking and shook his leg, and a piece of crap came out of his pant leg. When management tried coaching him about it, he would just make breathe heavy and kind of snort. Nicknames include Mouth Breather, Crap Stain, Forest Dump, Magic Mike, Phantom of the Opera. I thought that one was just people getting cruel about his deformed face at that point, as he does resemble the original Poto. But when someone found him on Facebook, his profile picture was the Broadway version of the character. No fighting it then. His breath is on par with his ass. He had horrible break room habits, like staring at you while slowly, loudly chomping on a celery stick during lunch. He ran into 2 different customers with pallet jacks, causing one woman a sprained ankle. He wasn't punished. But no one working in that department was allowed to use a pallet jack in paper and chemicals in one of the biggest supercenters in the US. Damn you, Mike! Story 48. I worked at a Walmart in Colorado during my junior year in high school. I lived in a higher income area, so there's no horror stories involving the people themselves. Except one gentleman. We'll call him Bill. Bill worked in the photo lab and electronics area. He claimed he knew everything there was about computers and whatever else. Nobody really believed him because he was working in the Walmart electronics sector. One day, he got into a pretty heavy argument with management over something stupid. He was very strong-headed and always wanted to win. Well, this argument escalated to the point he was asked to leave the job, aka fired. But he wasn't the kind of guy to leave with his tail between his legs. A day after his firing, I'm working the front register. I'm working register 3. I'm ringing up some ladies' G's, and at that moment, I hear a loud scream. It was the cashier at register 6. Apparently, whenever she tried to ring up bananas, a picture of a woman with a banana in every hole in her body covered the whole screen. Management tried to restart the computers, but the same thing kept happening. It would only happen on register 6. They had eventually found a thumb drive in the register computer under the counter that fed a virus to the computer to display. Every time bananas and avocados were rang up, register camera footage found Bill tampering with the computer before he left the day before. Oh yeah, and a guy rocket crap all over a urinal. Gotta clean that up. Story 49. Briefly worked at Walmart as a merchandise supervisor. The store I worked at was a brand new store set to open the following month, and the employees were tasked with getting everything set up and stocked. During that time, I received no proper supervisor training, just your generic computer modules, despite asking for it numerous times and being given the runaround every time. And they kept the employees in the store until ungodly hours at night because upper management was never satisfied with how the employees were setting up their respective departments. I worked over 12 hours on my birthday because the store manager didn't like how my department set up a display of jeans and men's clothing. The manager over the entire soft lines department was there only for about a week before being sent off to training, leaving us with the front-end manager who spent her time either getting at us over something mundane or working up in the front. Once the store opened, I was gitted at every day for any and everything imaginable because, surprise, they didn't bother to train me to do my job and our manager was still out training. I busted my ass to make sure product was moved out to the floor. Our section of the back room was organized. Heard a group of nearly unruly employees I and the zone manager were left to deal with daily planogram and price changes, all while zoning and handling returns. Finally, the front-end manager, still acting as the soft lines manager, pulled me into the office one day and tore me a new one for lack of productivity and was demoting me to a meager cashier position. Needless to say, I was livid and tried to defend myself by pointing out everything I had done to make sure my department stayed afloat, despite being run without a full-time manager and non-existent training. She shrugged and told me her mind was made up before sending me on my way. The next day, I clocked in, worked until my lunchtime, then walked out. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. Never again. Story 50? Mine isn't as bad as some of those here, but it was its own special kind of awful. I worked on third shift for a summer between college years. The Walmart I was in had about 1 hour's worth of music playing over the speakers all night, playing on a non-stop loop. My sleep habits were already pretty ducked from trying to adjust to third shift, but the music is what really did it. I heard that same music loop over and over again, all shift 5 days a week. When I left the store, I would still hear it running in my head. Then I started hearing it in my dreams. Then it got so ingrained that I started just dreaming I was working my shift at Walmart. Several days a week, I would have the experience of working an entire 8-hour shift. Then, just around quitting time, my alarm clock would go off, and I would wake up and go work an 8-hour shift. I quit a few weeks early at the end of the summer because I was losing my goddamn mind. Story 51. I wasted 3 years of my life at Walmart, primarily in the clothing and jewelry section. In the latter, people would use our layaway program like a bank. They'd come in, pick out a ring, put $50 down on it, come back a few days later and cancel the layaway to get their money back. It was amazing how many people would straight up tell me, I didn't trust myself not to spend it, and my phone bill is due tomorrow. This happened ridiculously often. A general horror story is one Black Friday. We had people taking ladders out of the hardware department and use them to climb up to the top shelves where our general layaway was stored. We had run out room in the back room. They started ripping open the packages and looting the stuff people had put money down on, and just walked off into the store with it. The working conditions, corporate greed in general, were pretty bad, but nothing you haven't heard a million times before. Lastly, a secondhand story. Apparently, a woman had a miscarriage in the restroom shortly before I started, and the managers had the mentally challenged cart boy clean it up so they didn't have to hire an outside team to do it. I can't confirm whether or not that's true, but several people insist it was while I was there. Story 52. One day, a woman stole a bottle of perfume and took it to the bathroom. She poured it out into her own container and then proceeded to fill the container with her own piss. She then took the bottle up to returns and tried to return it. To this day, I have no idea why my manager gave her the refund. It was very obvious that the woman pissed in the bottle because it was still warm. Story 53. My friend was violently ill, and because she was on her last warning. I think it was called D-Day or something like that. She couldn't make another mistake. She couldn't call in. She couldn't leave early. Nothing. If she did, she would be fired. The people that ran this Walmart were a holes. So one day, she comes in and has some stomach flu. She's so sick she can barely stand up straight. Managers, employees, even customers see her throw up in the trash can by her register. It's obvious that she's really, really sick. Can she go home? No. She was told by management and upper management that if she left, she would be fired. It was the most ducked-up thing in the world. They claimed in the system there was no way they could change her schedule, which was a lie. So they let her work her full shift, puking all the while, touching other people's groceries, handling money, everything for some unknown cruel reason. Horrible company with horrible values. I worked there too. I hate that place. They take advantage of the poor and get sick pleasure from it. I worked at another Walmart in Dallas, and they were really nice. So I guess it just depends on the management staff. But I'll never forget that absolute lack of decency. It was really demoralizing to watch your friend throw up in a trash can again and again and not be able to leave. Story 54. Oh boy. My dad has worked for Walmart nearing at 20 inches years. They let him go once because the greedy gits didn't want to pay him. He was making almost $18 an hour working overnight maintenance. I have 2 little sisters that at the time were both in elementary school. So working overnight, he would be home in the morning to get them ready for school, while my mom was getting ready for work and leaving. They told my dad that home office said they were changing the maint crew's schedule from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. to midnight 9 a.m. They knew he had to be home in the morning, so they made that up to push him out. Basically told him, if you can't work those hours, we have to let you go. He went back a year later and took an almost $5 pay cut. IDK, why? I've been fired from that same store 3 different times, all for insubordination. Pardon me for giving suggestions on how to increase productivity or suggesting which aisles for slower people to stock so we can get done faster, or for trying to figure out how we're getting 25 full-size 10. Pallets of dry groceries stocked with only 3 people and 9 full aisles during peak Christmas time. One of the ass managers overnight got caught damn employees in the manager's office. A couple of people caught stealing high-priced TVS and computers. One person worked electronics at night, so they had magnet keys. Another had a way to trip the alarm on a side emergency door. They then had someone waiting outside with a truck and rolled out cartfuls of electronics. Let's see. One of my ex-girlfriends was fired from another store for drinking on her breaks. And worst yet, the day I watched then CEO Lee Scott walk into our store with police and escort our GM and 2 hours people out after being caught. Story 55? As a cashier, we were required to know before we started the transaction if the customer was using WIC. So I am going about my business, and I go to start ringing the next customer up, and I see cheese, peanut butter, milk, eggs, and cereal. All of these are very common WIC items, so I very nicely ask her if this is going to be a WIC transaction. That was my mistake because she blew up on me, calling me a stupid racist because I just assumed she had to have WICE. She told me that was why I was working at Walmart because I was too dumb to actually go to college. I was in college at the time, with a school book under my register. It was really embarrassing, and I really didn't mean anything by it. I just didn't want to have to call a CSM over to void the transaction if I did it incorrectly. Story 56. Ooh, Walmart stories. I worked in the Tire Lube Express for around 4 years. The best one I have for them screwing up is based around a particularly special coworker that we dubbed Hindenburg. Why did we call him Hindenburg? Because everything he touched, he ducked up. Big time. Along with that, he got kicked out of high school at 21, at which time he had to wear a helmet because of the soft spot in his skull that never fused. And Walmart hired this man to work on people's cars. Anyways, Hindenburg was working on 4 new tires for a guy's car. Walks up the stairs to where we keep the tires above the shop, in July heat, with no ass. Gets each tire individually, carries them down the stairs, and then starts mounting them on the wheels. On the 3rd tire, he realizes he got the wrong type of tire, and this is where his rage takes over. He throws one of the wheels, which hits the lift controls for the vehicle, and the vehicle drops to the ground with no wheels on it. So this is around 3,000 pounds resting on the disc brakes. Needless to say, it jacked the car up. Management is called, Hindenburg is told to go to lunch, and they want us to tell the customer that they suffered mechanical failure. If by mechanical failure they meant his father should have pulled out, then yes, but they meant the lift suffered mechanical failure. We refused to lie for the Berg, so she stood at the register, waiting for the customer to show up. Lied to them and drove them to the shop where their car was towed to. That's probably the best other than the adults that peed themselves in their cars. Story 57. Not a Walmart story, but I was working at a Farmer Jack back when they still existed. I was like 14 or 15. I ended up quitting on my birthday when I was assigned to be a greeter at the door. I had a lady come in flipping out that the can bottle return machine was jammed. I went in to see if the bottle room boys were there so they could help her, and of course, they were not. Being that I didn't know jack crap about the machine, I politely directed her to the customer service desk. She flipped the duck out, started screaming at me and demanding I help her. I apologized and tried to explain to her that there was nothing I could do for her because I had no idea how work or fix the machines, and again directed her to customer service. As she finally stomped away, she says, "Damn you!" And I just apologize again because I have no idea what else to do. The idiot complained about me to my manager, told me I was rude to her and refused to help her. I got called into the manager's office and explained my side of the story in tears. I didn't get fired or written up, but I didn't ever bother going back. Damn retail. Story 58. My wife got assaulted for not selling liquor to a girl. Worst part? Walmart wouldn't let her have the day off to go to the mandatory court date to testify. Story 59. I worked at Walmart as a cart pusher, and in my job description, it says along with getting carts, I am also required to empty the trash in the parking lot. Well, one day, I'm working with 2 other cart pushers while going through the motions and emptying trash in the parking lot. Each corral has 1 trash can, so the furthest trash cans have trash, even though no one throws much away in them. Fast forward to that fateful day. We are emptying trash and get to the trash can that is on the end of the parking lot. Normally, these aren't that big of a deal, so we proceed to empty like normal. Well, only that this trash was different than the rest, and that moments away, my life and sense of smell would be changed forever. I begin pulling the trash bag up out of the trash can to put it in the bucket that the trash goes in, and when I lifted this trash bag halfway up, it hit me. The smell was unbearable and resembled rotting flesh that has been cooking in the sun. It got so bad that I dropped the bag and left that trash can full because honestly, I'm not paid enough for this crap. I learned a week later that the smell was from a trucker who thought it was a funny prank. Good idea to poop in a cup and put it in the trash, where it cooked like a piece of toast in a convection oven for a week. So, yeah, pretty horrifying. Story 60. Let's see. A former coworker stole a generator, got fired, then robbed the money center at gunpoint. A kid, couldn't have been much older than 12, used to come in and was notorious for stealing crap. So management would watch him whenever he came in. One day he noticed and walked up to an electronic sales associate and went, "Kid, you sell the new 2 Chainz CD, associate." "No, we don't sell that CD here, kid." "Oh, okay. Well, if you're that idiot," referring to the manager that was watching him, "ever walk up to me, I'll damn hit you," and walks off. He comes in a couple days later and I see him trying to steal crap and I'm fed up with his bullcrap, so I call management and app. He tries to walk off and I won't let him. Not supposed to, but damn it. Once again, the little punk runs his mouth and threatens to beat my git ass. Yet I outweigh him by at least 150 pounds and at least a foot taller. Had an exco worker come in stoned out of her mind and try to walk out of the store with 2 50-inches TVs in her cart and say to me and another coworker, "Come on, you guys know me." Story 60. My friend and I were working late one. We were the only cashiers on duty and were in the cigarette register. There was only one CSM on duty and the store was pretty empty. Our CSM was out doing perimeter when the incident occurred. We were closing up one of the registers when a couple came up to us. Before we even had a moment to tell them the register was closed and we'll help them on the next one, they pulled out a gun and demanded the money. We were in shock. We have never been trained for something like this. My friend handed over the bag that had almost all of the money in the register, except the coins. And they then told us to open the other register and do the same. In order to do that, we needed a CSM, and we could have just scanned something and cashed it, but that when I had a panic attack. They freaked out and ran. My friend called 911 and we reported everything that happened. The store manager was pissed because that register had over $3,000 in cash and made a rule that there had to be 3 CSMs for closing and that every hour they would have to pull half of our registers in order to prevent a loss like that. A couple days later, that same couple was caught at a 711 after shooting the cashier. Story 62. Here's one more. Ask any Walmart employee who worked the holidays just what exactly Black Friday means to them and watch for the telltale horror to pass behind their eyes. The one I got to experience was extremely upsetting. Sales floor packed wall to wall as the shoppers vied for the best prospective spots when the sales officially went live. We were dispersed around the store to keep an eye on the countless pallets wrapped up tight in plastic wrap, to keep them untouched until the right time. Yeah, like that would ever work. With about an hour to go, people started taking every opportunity to pick the wrapping apart and sneak clothing, DVDs, whatever they could find, into their carts to get an edge up on everyone else. It was pure and utter chaos. With a half hour to go, the managers finally just said, "Damn it," and like some sort of eldritch shopping horror, a wave of tearing plastic rippled from one end of the store to the other, signaling the beginning of the end. And that's when things went from bubbling just beneath the surface to unbridled insanity. People clawing over each other, desperate to grab that last Xbox controller or Pixar movie. It was on that night I experienced true shame at our consumerist culture and vowed to never let myself be dragged out on Black Friday again. Story 63. My husband worked for Walmart one summer back when we were dating. They had a fundraiser selling happy faces for $1, and there was a contest to sell the most, with the prize being a day off with pay. There was an older woman, Carol, at the store who took great pride in winning every contest so naturally. Everyone loathed her. My husband decided to get on her nerves and actually sell some smiley faces. He asked every single customer who came through. Soon they are neck and neck. The other cashiers are delighted, so even though they are long out of the contest, they start selling smiley faces on his behalf. Carol gives her own husband a huge stack to sell at his job, a nearby defense contractor. Even though she has very high numbers, my husband works the last day of the contest and pulls ahead by a few. The next morning, without checking the board, she puts her arm around him and says, "Well, I guess you lost." He tells her she'd better go check on that. Well, Carol is outraged that his numbers were higher, so she accuses him of cheating because other people sold for him. He points out that she also had other people selling for her. Management is very pleased with their record-breaking fundraiser, but decided to give neither of them the day off to placate Carol. Story 64. Not me, but this is my mom's Walmart horror story. She worked at Walmart when I was little, not even 4 yet. When I was little, I had some kind of recurring virus that caused me to develop a 104-degree fever and a severe case of hives. So one day while she is at work, my dad calls the store and tells her that I am very sick again. So of course, she goes to the manager and said she needed to leave because her baby was ill. They told her, "You need to choose between Walmart and your family." Haha. Her response was, "I gave birth to my child, not to Walmart, goodbye," and walked out. That lady. Story 65. I worked at Kmart in Sydney, Australia for about a year and a half a few years ago. I was quickly promoted to the electronics section. Most of my job was printing photos and redirecting people to better equipped stores when they needed actual equipment. However, we also hosted the DVDs and CDs. It was here that I met my most memorable customer. She was a bald, mid-30s woman who was morbidly obese with her stomach hanging out of her shirt. She also happened to have a partially smoked in her ear, like an artist might have a pencil. She very sweetly asked me if they had this song and proceeded to sing it in full. When she was done, she could neither tell me title nor the artist. I did not recognize the tune, though not from her lack of talent. When she continues to look at me expectantly, I just told her we didn't have it. With this disappointing result, she began to waddle away from me. It was at this point she gave me these parting words. She turned back and said, "You look like my classmate Andrew. I know you're not him, though." And then she walked out of my life.